Every Sunday morning, a little girl named Lily walked to the same hospital and sat beneath the old oak tree near the entrance. She was only 8 years old, but she always carried herself with a strange kind of patience. She wore the same blue coat almost every weekend, held a small red lunchbox tightly against her. Just people passing through the hospital entrance began to notice her. Some thought she was waiting for her mother, others believed her father was inside, but Lily never explained. She simply sat beneath the tree and watched the hospital doors. In cold Sunday morning, a nurse finally approached her. The nurse smiled gently and asked if she was waiting for someone. Lily looked up and nodded. "Me friend is inside," she whispered. Nurse looked toward the hospital window. "Shwo is your friend?" Lily lowered her eyes. "I do not know his name." Nurse was confused. "Then why do you come every Sunday?" "Because he needs someone to wait for him." Little girl opened her red lunchbox. Inside was a small sandwich wrapped carefully in paper. "Bring him lunch every Sunday," she said. But the nurse knew something Lily did not. The hospital had hundreds of patients and none of them were allowed to meet strangers without permission. Still, Lily returned every Sunday, rain or sunshine, winter or summer. She always sat beneath the same tree and always left the untouched sandwich beside her before going home. One Sunday, the nurse decided to follow her. She watched Lily stand. Suddenly, when a hospital worker opened the main doors, little girl smiled for the first time. The nurse saw hope in her eyes. Lily picked up her lunchbox and walked toward the entrance. A bit before she could enter, a security guard stopped her. The girl quietly pointed toward the fourth floor. The nurse looked up and suddenly realized Lily was not waiting for just anyone. She was waiting for the same man she had seen looking through that window every Sunday. Man who had been in the hospital for nearly 6 months, a man who had never received a visitor. And when the nurse finally asked who he was, Lily gave her an answer that changed everything. "He's the man who saved my life." The nurse stood silently beside Lily. She wanted to ask more, but the little girl had already turned toward the hospital doors. Security guard recognized Lily and allowed her inside. After speaking with the nurse together, they walked toward the fourth floor. The corridor was quiet. At the end of it was a small room with a large window. Lily stopped outside the door. She held her lunchbox close to her chest. "He does not know I come here," she whispered. The nurse looked through the glass. Inside the room sat an elderly man with silver hair. Was staring at the rain falling against the window. His name was Mr. Thomas. Had no family nearby, no visitors, and almost no one who even knew he was there. The nurse suddenly remembered the story 6 months earlier. A little girl had been brought to the hospital after getting lost near a busy road. A stranger had pulled her away just seconds before a car passed. That stranger had been badly injured, but the little girl had walked away without a scratch. Man who saved her had refused to give his name before being taken to the hospital. He had never forgotten him. She had asked the police where he was taken. Eventually she discovered the hospital, but she was too young to understand why she could not simply walk into his room. So every Sunday she came and waited outside it. Nurse looked at Lily. "We did you never tell your parents?" Lily became quiet. "Because my mother died last year." The nurse felt her heart sinking. "My father works far away," she continued. "He thought if I stopped coming he might think nobody remembered him." The nurse looked back at Mr. Thomas. Then she opened the door. Lily froze. The old man slowly turned his head. His eyes widened when he saw the little girl. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Lily lifted her lunchbox. "He brought you something, Mer?" Thomas stared at her. A tear rolled down his cheek. "You are the little girl from the road." Lily smiled, and for the first time in 6 months Mer Thomas was no longer alone. After that Sunday, everything began to change. Lily was finally allowed to visit Mr. Thomas every Sunday. She arrived with her little red lunchbox. Amidst she brought sandwiches, amidst apples, and sometimes only a small drawing she had made at school. Mer Thomas kept every drawing beside his bed. Only picture showed the two of them sitting beneath the old oak tree. Another showed a bright yellow house with flowers around the windows. When Mr. Thomas asked about the house, Lily smiled. That is where I want to live one day, with a garden and a little dog. Thomas laughed softly. You have big dreams. Lily looked at him. What about you? The old man looked toward the window. I had dreams once, but I stopped thinking about them a long time ago. Lily did not understand, so she simply reached across the bed and held his hand. Then you can start again. Those 4 words stayed with Mr. Thomas long after Lily left for the first time in years. He began talking to the nurses, started eating properly. He even asked the doctor when he could leave the hospital. The doctors were surprised by the change, but Lily did not care about medical report. She only wanted her friend to get better. Than one Sunday, she arrived and noticed something strange. The oak tree was covered with tiny white flowers. She ran toward the entrance, expecting to see Mr. Thomas waiting at the 4th-floor window, but the window was entirely rushed inside. The nurse was standing near the reception desk. Lily looked frightened. Where is Mr. Thomas? Nurse knelt beside her. Was moved to another room last night. Is he okay? Nurse smiled. As much better. Than why did nobody tell me? Because he asked us to wait until today. Nurse handed Lily a small envelope. Her name was written across the front. Lily opened it carefully. Inside was a short letter, and one sentence made her heart stop. "I have something important to tell you before I leave." Lily ran through the hospital corridor with the letter pressed against her chest. Nurse led her to a quiet room at the end of the building. When the door opened, Lily saw Mr. Thomas sitting beside the window. Looked healthier than before. His silver hair was neatly combed, and beside his chair stood a small suitcase. "Here you leaving, Mer?" Thomas smiled. His Lilith girl lowered her head. "He thought you were going to stay." "I am going home," he said, "but I want you to come with me." Lily looked confused. Nurse stood behind her and smiled at her. Thomas explained that he had spent years living alone. His wife had died many years earlier. His only daughter had moved abroad and had slowly lost contact with him. Had no one waiting outside the hospital until Lily came every Sunday. "You reminded me that people can still care about each other," he said. Lily wiped her eyes. "But I only brought you sandwiches." Thomas laughed. "Sometimes a sandwich can mean more than 1,000 words." Then he handed her a small wooden box. Inside was an old photograph of a young girl standing beside a woman. "This was my daughter when she was your age." Lily looked carefully at the photograph. She had the same gentle smile. "We are you showing me this because I want you to know something, Mer?" Thomas took a deep breath. "Day I saved you near the road was not an accident. He was walking home when I saw you standing alone. You looked frightened, and when I pulled you away from the car, I thought I was simply doing what anyone should do. But later I realized some things. You gave me a reason to keep fighting, and your Sundays gave me a reason to wake up." Lily hugged him tight. Nurse quietly turned away. Thomas had tears in his eyes. Then he whispered something Lily never expected. "He want to be part of your life if your father will allow it." Lily smiled through her tears, but there was still one problem. Her father had never met Mr. Thomas, and Lily knew he might not understand. So the following Sunday she brought someone else to the hospital. The following Sunday, Lily arrived at the hospital, holding her father's hand. Her father had returned home unexpectedly after hearing everything that had happened. Eddie had been angry at first, not because Lily cared about Mr. Thomas, but because she had been visiting a hospital alone every Sunday without telling him. Then Lily showed him the old photograph. She told him the whole story. Her father listened quietly. When they reached the 4th-floor, Mr. Thomas was waiting near the window. Lily's father walked toward him. For a moment the two men simply looked at each other. Then Mr. Thomas stood up. "I am sorry if I caused trouble." Lily's father shook his head. "You saved my daughter. I should be thanking you." Thomas Smoletti did not save her alone. She saved me too. Lily looked between them. Then she opened her red lunchbox. Inside were 3 sandwiches, and for her cell phone for her father and one for Mr. Thomas. They sat together beside the hospital window for the first time. The old man had a family around him, not the family he had lost, but a new family created by kindness. Months later, Mr. Thomas left the hospital, moved into a small house near Lily's family. There was a garden outside, and Lily finally got the little dog she had always dreamed about every Sunday. The three of them sat beneath a tree in the garden. Emily still brought her red lunchbox, but she no longer had to wait outside a hospital. She had someone waiting for her 2 years later. Lily would often tell people about the old man who saved her life, but whenever someone asked what happened after, Thatch always smiled and said, "Sometimes we think we are waiting for someone when in truth someone may be waiting for you." And that is how one little girl sitting outside a hospital every Sunday changed the life of a lonely old man forever.